this might be the worst Trump crisis yet. It's so apt that we're live streaming on a channel called Cliff's Edge because that's where we are. That's where Trump has taken us. In George Orwell's 1984, and side note, when I was a congressional staffer, I did a delegation trip to China and I left that book on my bedside table just to tweak them. The authoritarian party, one of the members says, we believe in power for its own sake. We're not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power, not wealth or luxury or long life or happiness, only power, pure power. Obedience is not enough. Unless those you rule over are suffering, how can you be sure that they're obeying your will and not their own? Power is in inflicting pain and humiliation. Isn't that the story of the last month? The Substacker and conservative Andrew Sullivan, who's a naturalized citizen of the United States, recently canceled a trip to the UK for fear that he would not be readmitted to his own country, America, where he is a citizen. He wrote on Friday on Substack, they knew that Rumeysa Öztürk, that's the tough student who the Washington Post found the State Department had no evidence of any anti-Semitism or ties to terrorism. They knew that she had done nothing wrong when they sent masked men to grab and detain her. This administration knew that Kilmar Abrego Garcia had a lawful protection order from U.S. courts preventing him from being deported. They sent him to a foreign jail anyway. And they knew that the Supreme Court told them that Abrego Garcia must be returned. They don't care. Now, all of you probably saw or read about the Kafka-esque press conference with the president of El Salvador the other day. He's a self-described dictator. True story. Calls himself a dictator, in which with smirks and laughter, they laid out their cruel catch-22. They're like a bunch of sadistic frat boys torturing a pledge. El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, said he has no power to return Garcia. And the Trump team said, we have no power to do anything about it now that he's out of the country. Yale historian Timothy Snyder wrote this morning on Substack, summing this up, that the president has now defied a Supreme Court ruling to return a man who is mistakenly, by their own admissions, mistakenly sent to a gulag in another country. They celebrated the suffering of this innocent person and then spoke of sending Americans to foreign concentration camps. This is the beginning of an American policy of state terror, and it has to be identified as such to be stopped. So that's what I mean when I say we're at the cliff's edge, and why the title of today's show is The Worst Trump Crisis. We're asking about whether he's about to cross this last line to a disaster. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but make no mistake, at least in my mind, it would be an utter and unmitigated disaster to openly defy the Supreme Court or any of the federal courts. We can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. Once we cross that line, there's no going back. And in fact, things are likely to get a lot worse. If they can get away with this, they can get away with much more. They're clearly testing the limits of how far they can go. Over the weekend, President Trump announced unprecedented plans to target former government officials from his first term simply for criticizing him. The White House issued directives ordering the Justice Department to investigate Chris Krebs, who ran Trump's cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency, and former senior Department of Homeland Security official Miles Taylor. I think he's guilty of treason, Trump said. Don't forget, as Tony Michaels pointed out in his Substack column today, Trump was caught on a hot mic after that press conference with Bukele, after that ended, saying the quiet part out loud, saying the homegrowns are next. You've got to build about 5 more prisons. What does he mean by that? Back in February, Bukele offered to Secretary of State Marco Rubio to take American citizens into his prison. You can look it up. Rolling Stone's Nikki McCann Ramirez reported that talks are underway inside the White House right now to try to make that happen. When asked whether he would be willing to deport American citizens convicted of violent crime to El Salvador, he said, I'm all for it. Look, sure, this could be more Trump blather, trying to shock the libs, trying to get more attention to feed his gluttonous, never-ending hunger for attention. But the Trump team knows that if Mr. Abrego Garcia comes back to the U.S. and is available to the media and gets to describe the hell that he's surely living through, it'll bring a ton of negativity their way. And they just finished trying to take the attention off of this disaster by creating another giant disaster of a different kind with tariffs. They don't want him coming back. Kristi Noem actually said that he and the other 238 detained and deported individuals should, quote, spend the rest of their lives in that El Salvadorian prison. The courts have said you can't do that. So this is where the rubber meets the road. And of course, they're testing the limits everywhere. That's what that attack on Harvard, freezing $2.2 billion in federal funds, is all about. That's what the continued leak of all of that skullduggery happening from DOJ inside federal agencies. That's what that's all about. The most recent, by the way, is that they've had thousands and thousands of people declared dead because they want to question their immigration status. And by declaring them dead, they can prevent them from earning wages, and they think that'll force them to leave the country. Now, this is illegal. It's a crime. It's falsifying government records, but they're doing it. This is even what they're doing. They're testing the limits by continuing to bar the Associated Press from joining the White House press pool. Seems like a small thing, but a federal judge ordered them to stop doing it. And as of today, they're still doing it. They're still blatantly violating a court order. Now, when the media talks about this stuff, they usually ask, are we in a constitutional crisis? My question of the day, how are we not in a constitutional crisis?